Overtime isn't something I usually minded. The building was always quieter after hours, and there was something almost peaceful about working alone without anyone getting in the way. I'd been cleaning that office block for going on 3 years by then, so I knew every floor, every corner, every quirk of the place better than most of the people who actually worked there. The contract we had with the building required a full clean every weekday evening, starting at 8 p.m. Usually there were 2 of us, but my colleague had called in sick, and since the company had recently lost a few contracts, nobody was keen on paying overtime to bring in a third person just to cover one shift. So it was just me that night, with 6 floors to get through before morning. I started at the top and worked my way down like always. The upper floors were mostly meeting rooms and executive offices, which were always the easiest since nobody really used them that much. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, things were going smoothly enough, and I was actually ahead of schedule, which was a rare thing. The 3rd floor was open plan. Rows of desks, monitors left on screensavers, the usual mess of coffee cups and paperwork that people always promised to sort out and never did. I'd learned a long time ago not to move anything important looking, so I mostly worked around the clutter. It was somewhere around the middle section of the floor that I noticed it. A desk near the far window. At first, I thought someone had stayed late and forgotten to take their food with them, which happened more than you'd think. But as I got closer, I realized the meal was only half eaten. Noodles from one of those takeaway containers. And when I reached out to move it aside, the container was still warm. I stood there for a moment, just kind of processing that. The building had been locked since 6 p.m. I had the only set of keys, aside from the security desk downstairs, and I hadn't seen anyone on my way up. I told myself maybe the insulation of the container had kept it warm longer than expected. It was a reasonable enough explanation, and I was tired, so I moved on. I finished the 3rd floor and made my way down to the 2nd. But something kept pulling my attention back. Not a sound exactly, more like the feeling you get when you're certain you've forgotten something but can't remember what. I shook it off and kept working. It wasn't until I was emptying the bins near the kitchenette that one of the other cleaners, who sometimes covered the morning shift, had left a note taped to the fridge. A small handwritten thing, reminding staff to clear out anything belonging to Marcus from the 3rd floor, out of respect. There was a date on the note. The food in the fridge needed to be cleared by the end of that week. I didn't think much of it in the moment. Staff turnover happened. People moved on. It was only when I went back up to the 3rd floor to retrieve a mop I had left behind that I stopped in the doorway. I know the layout of that floor the way I know the layout of my own home. I have cleaned every single desk on that floor dozens of times. And standing there in the doorway, looking across the room toward the far window, I knew without any doubt that the desk with the half-eaten meal was the same desk that had been cleared out and left completely empty for the past 2 weeks. I checked with the building manager the following morning, partly to report what I had found, and partly because I needed to hear someone tell me there was a logical explanation. He went quiet for a moment before he told me that Marcus had died at his desk 2 weeks prior. Cardiac arrest. Happened sometime in the early evening, after most of the staff had already gone home. He also told me something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since. The meal they found on his desk when the paramedics arrived. Half-eaten noodles from the same takeaway place around the corner. They never did figure out where the warm container came from that night, and I stopped taking the overtime shifts after that.